everyone, my name is Sarah and welcome to my September reading wrap-up. Last month I managed to read a grand total of 8 books, 7 of which were physical books and 1 of which was an audiobook. I had a really great reading month. I read a real mishmash of genres and readerships. I read some middle grade, some YA, some contemp, fantasy. It was all happening. I did read some really great books last month. I did read one that I think will definitely make my top books of 2019 list, so that was pretty exciting. Maybe even 2. Like, yeah, I loved what I read last month. But without further ado, let's dive into my thoughts on all of these books. The first book I read was, of course, our YA Room Book of the Month, Monuments by the Love Us YA King himself, Will Kostakis. Will is just the coolest author ever. I kid you not. He is amazing. He's constantly dashing about the country, going to schools in different cities, and I think he went to some ridiculous number of places to celebrate the release of Monuments, like 60 places or 30 places. It was wild. But I was lucky enough to see him at a Melbourne Writers Festival event called Y'all Are Thirsty, which is basically authors reading fanfic, and it was the greatest thing ever. Will read out a fanfic about Harry Potter that he wrote, and it was freaking incredible, and if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link down below. It's on his website. It's pure gold. So of course I was super excited to get my hands on Monuments. I have loved his previous books. I've read the first third and the sidekicks. Haven't yet read Loathing Lola, but I have a copy on my shelf and I'm so excited to get to it. And then of course I was super keen to dive into his first fantasy novel. How exciting is that? Monuments is about a 16-year-old boy named Connor who discovers a hidden trapdoor underneath his school and then realizes that there are like gods hidden under schools. It's wild. He goes on this adventure with a girl named Sally and a boy named Lockie to go and find these other gods which are known as monuments. But they get into their fair share of trouble along the way. Monuments was a super fun read. At times it did feel like a middle grade novel because of like those fun adventure elements, but I really enjoyed that about it. And I'm just so excited for so many teenagers to read this book because it's like the epitome of a fantastic novel. It's fast paced and the characters are great and the ending is like, what even? I cannot wait to get my hands on the second book. This was such a good setup novel. I can't wait to see where the story goes from here. Honestly, it can go in any direction. I'm just so excited. But yeah, really great start to a series. If you haven't read this one yet, do go and pick it up. Support Love Us YA, support Will Kostakis. You're doing a good deed. The next book I read in September was I Hold Your Heart by Karen Gregory. I was really excited to read this book because I loved Karen's other books, Skylarks and Countless. In Skylarks there was queer girl representation, so I was like, yes, love it. And when I saw Hold Your Heart and her name on the front cover, I was just like, finally, a new release. I'm totally here for it. While I did really enjoy this book, it was one of those reads that it just really hard to get through. Like, it crushed my soul. The subject matter was quite heavy at times and I just wanted to reach through pages and shake these characters because that was really frustrating. But basically it's about this girl named Gemma who meets this guy named Aaron and they fall head over heels in love for each other. This is kind of Gemma's first love and she feels this kind of infatuation with him. But little by little this relationship starts taking over Gemma's life and it's quite toxic. And that was really heartbreaking to read. In saying that, it was phenomenally written. Like, Karen Gregory knows how to write this stuff. Oh my god. The fact that I felt so frustrated reading this book is a really good sign. I mean, it's not like a book that you jump in bed with at the end of the night and relax with, but I do think it's a really important read. The next book I read during September was Rules for Vanishing. Oh my god. This book creeped me the hell out. Seriously, this is one of the scariest books I've read since I read Sarah Epstein's Small Spaces, which, my gosh, I could not sleep for like 3 nights after. Blech. Rules for Vanishing is the read for this Halloween, honestly. If you're gonna pick up one spooky book this October, make sure it's Rules of Vanishing. You will not regret it. I mean, if you hate scary stuff, maybe you will regret it, but just sleep with the lights on, it's fine. This book is about a girl named Sarah whose sister went missing and she thinks that her sister went along this road to find this person called Lucy Gallows. So Sarah and her friends get together to wander down this road that's like super creepy, searching for her lost sister and the ghost of Lucy Gallows. And it is just one of the most messed up things I've ever read, like in a good way though. There are vengeful spirits and like demon type things, and it just, it's super creepy. It will make like tingles go down your spine. It's just, oh my god, I just have no words. It's that terrifying. So yeah, if you love being thoroughly creeped out while you read, definitely check out Rules for Vanishing. The next book I read was The Liars by Jennifer Matthew, which I was really looking forward to reading because I loved Jennifer's other books, but unfortunately this one kind of fell a little bit flat for me. I was excited because I loved Moxie, but I just couldn't get around this like thriller, psychological kind of mystery like in this town. I just, not really for me. And normally I'm all for thrillers, but I just couldn't get into this one. I did end up DNFing this book after about 100 pages because I was just really not feeling it. So it's basically about this girl who meets this guy and she has a really controlling mother, and like her brother wants to leave this small town. I don't really know what it was about this book that I couldn't really get into. I feel like maybe I wasn't super connected with the characters, and I wasn't super here for the plot. I've read a lot of straight books recently, and it's just like this girl getting with this guy, and I'm like, cool, but where is the gay stuff? Like, I need that content in my life. And maybe it could have been creepier as well. Maybe it would have come later in the book, but I mean, if it's like a thriller or kind of going for those vibes, I want that stuff early on, so it really hooks me. But I just really felt nothing for this book. I read 100 pages and couldn't care less about the characters. The next book I read was one of my absolute favorites and will definitely be on my favorite list of 2019, and that was Loki by Mackenzie Lee. I have been so excited to read this book ever since it was announced because I freaking love Mackenzie Lee. She wrote The Gentleman's Guide and The Lady's Guide, and I just love her. And how freaking cool is it that Marvel asked her to write this book about Loki? It's mind-blowing. It's just the coolest thing ever. Loki is definitely my favorite Marvel character. I loved him in Thor Ragnarok, and I desperately need more Loki content. I'm so excited for his TV show. So this book was like a win-win-win because favorite author, favorite character, and it was just the best book ever. You could definitely go into this book without knowing an awful lot about Loki because Mackenzie does kind of recap, you know, who Loki is and about Thor and Odin and all that kind of stuff. And it does take place on Asgard for about the first 100 pages, and then it takes place on Earth. And it's the greatest thing ever. Loki goes to 19th century London, and it's just like him gallivanting around the city and meeting new friends and like trying to solve murder, and it is fantastic. But besides being a super fun, adventurous novel with a little bit of murder, at its core, Loki is a book about family and sexuality, and it's just so beautiful. Next up, I read Prom, which is a new young adult novel based on a musical, which is super cool. I actually had no idea that it was based on a Broadway sensation when I picked this book up, and I didn't even realize until I finished it. So I'm stupid. Clearly. On the back, it does say the hilarious and heartwarming novel based on the Broadway sensation. Clearly, I don't read blurbs. I was just going into this book thinking that it's about two queer girls going to prom, and that's effectively what it was. So on that level, I really did love this book. I loved reading about two queer girls in America. It did make me supremely frustrated at times because of how close-minded some people can be and homophobic, and I just, it's really upsetting. Over the last few years especially, I've just gotten so used to seeing happy queer books and where characters don't have to deal with homophobia, and that's great. But the reality is not all people are that lucky. So I guess Prom was really real in that aspect. However, I did read some reviews about this book after I finished it, and apparently this book does erase a couple people's sexuality or change their sexuality to better fit the story. So I'm not really about that. I mean, if you're basing it on something, why can't you just keep the characters the same? I feel like one of these characters was originally pansexual and they made her, I believe, a lesbian. Don't fully know. I've never seen the musical, so I'm not sure which character they were referring to, but yeah, I'm not really about that life, if that is the case. I guess when you're going into this book, just be aware that this book does take a different direction from the musical. And yeah, it's frustrating. If that's gonna make you angry, don't pick up this book, but by itself, it's a cute read. It's nothing that stands out for me. It's not one of these books I'll be recommending for great queer representation just because of like the blatant homophobia that's in that. I feel like we don't really need that in our lives. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was cute. Take it or leave it, basically. The second to last book I read was Tunnel of Bones by Queen Victoria Schwab. Y'all know Queen V is my wife. We're officially married. It's like totally legit. Just kidding, I'm just obsessed with her. I was so excited to get my hands on a new Victoria Schwab book. I absolutely loved the first book in this series, City of Ghosts, set in Edinburgh. It was just fantastic, super fun read, a little bit spooky. Love my middle grade books, so I was totally here for it. I did listen to this one on audio because I really love the narrator, and I listened to the first one on audio as well, so I'm like, may as well continue it. Tunnel of Bones is about a girl named Cassidy Blake who almost died when she was a bit younger. She fell into a river, and then this ghost named Jacob saved her, and ever since then she has the ability to pass into the veil and kind of see ghosts and experience that separate world. The first book was set in Edinburgh, and they went to a whole bunch of like graveyards and spooky castles and stuff, and then the second one, Tunnel of Bones, was set in Paris, and they go to like the tunnels of bones, like the catacombs under the city, and it's just the coolest thing ever. I've never been to Paris or Edinburgh. I really need to add them to my list, but it was just so atmospheric and spooky, and I loved every second of reading it. If you have a young person in your life that's really into Halloween, make sure you give them a copy of City of Ghosts and Tunnel of Bones. And finally, the last book I read in September was Frankly in Love by David Yoon. This book is our YA Room October book of the month. I got a head start on it because I simply could not wait, and it was fantastic. If you're thinking, that name sounds familiar, it's because David Yoon is the husband of Nicola Yoon, who wrote Everything Everything, and the son is also a star, and Frankly in Love, quite frankly, should be your next read. This book is about a few things. The first half of it is a really cute kind of rom-com about this boy whose parents are making him date only Korean girls, but he kind of falls for this white girl, so he decides to fake date this Korean girl to make his parents happy. I love the fake dating trope, and it was really well done in this book, and it was just so much fun to read. The second half of this book was a bit more serious. It was about racism and experiencing that in different communities and in different ways, and it was also about illness and loss, and this book took such a dramatic turn. But despite it being about very many and different things, I felt like this book was exceptionally well written. I loved the main character, Frank. His voice was super funny, and I really felt like I was inside his head. He was just a really fun person to hang out with. This book is about so many things, but at its core, it's about family expectations, racism, love, and loss, and it was just beautiful. Frankly in Love is a book that you should absolutely read. Add it to your TBR. It is so deserving of the hype it's been getting because it's freaking incredible, and this is definitely one of my favorite reads of 2019. Loved it. So yeah, these are all the books I read during September. I had a really great reading month. I read some phenomenal books, which I'm really happy about, and I read quite a big variety too, so that was pretty cool. If you've read any of these, do let me know what you thought of them down in the comments, or if they're on your TBR, I would love to know that as well. But that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye everyone!